Scott and I are looking forward to sharing with you some of our favorite holiday recipes and also how you can get the most out of your holiday foods.
And this week on WTF, we're going to make an amazing brown sugar Christmas ham and a few things that you can make with that ham in the days following Christmas. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Garin.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. And as you can see here, Scott and I are wearing Santa hats. And it's going to be all about Christmas and the holidays this week and next week on WTF. So we are doing a special two-part series. And today we're going to cover savory dishes and how you can get the most out of them for Christmas and the holidays. And then next week, we're going to be covering the sweet side and, of course, desserts. So that's really, really exciting.
Very exciting. As you can see, we're wearing Christmas hats.
It's both of the rare occasions when we do this, so we're like, oh, hats. Anyway, so you make sure that you ring the bell and subscribe, and you'll get notified about the sweet episode coming up next week, and of course, all of our future episodes that come out every single Tuesday. Now, Scott, I know that, one of the things about the holidays is that we all tend to cook a lot and we make a lot of food, and sometimes that leads to a lot of leftovers. And, we were talking about how do you get the most out of them, so that's kind of became the focus of this episode, really, to make sure that you're not really wasting any of the delicious food that you purchased and prepared lovingly for your friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. A key word to use there is waste, and a lot of the times you'll get down to, let's just say, the bone of a ham, and then it goes into the trash, and that's sometimes that's 10% of the weight of the entire thing that you paid for that you're then throwing away. And there's things that you can do with it to save yourself money and also make something that's great. Yeah,
so I'm excited to see what it is, right? Because at least I know for me, leftovers, the first day is great, the second it's okay, and by the third day you are sick of it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in seeing like how you made it different so that you're having a different dining experience every single time.
Sure. So we made the ham here, and we actually used Prague Powder number 1. And Prague Powder number 1 is a curing salt, not to be confused with Prague Powder number 2. That's for long-term dry cures. But if you're doing a wet cure similar to a bacon and a ham like this, Prague Powder number 1 works great for this. It helps prevent botulism, so that's the biggest thing. If you want to learn all about Prague Powder, we have a complete episode on it, so you can check the link in the description below for a full overview of Prague Powder there. But just know, if you look at the recipe on this, follow it accordingly, you'll be perfectly fine in making a great ham.
Yeah, and just so for reference, so if we are looking at Prague Powder number 1, one of the questions that people always ask is, why is it pink? And then if they see it's not pink, they're like, does that mean it's gone bad? What's that all about?
Yeah, so that's really, the reason why they color it pink is so that you don't confuse it with table salt. It looks very similar to a table salt. It's a very fine grain. They color it pink, but over time that color will naturally just fade, and the color will almost be like a slightly yellow. But as long as you keep it in the package that you purchased it in, you'll know that it's Prague Powder number 1, and you just keep it like that, and you won't have to worry about it getting confused, because it could, in high doses, then it could potentially be hazardous. But as long as you use it in the recommended usage that we have in our recipes, you'll be perfectly fine.
Okay, great. And what did you do with this ham?
So what I did is I made a brown sugar cure. It's actually a brine, so I left this in the brine for about 2 weeks. This is actually a picnic shoulder, so not all of us at home have the ability to have a refrigerator that's going to hold an entire leg of ham, because generally the ham is from the leg, which is very large if you get a fresh one. It's not like the store-bought ones that are, it's this meat that has no bone in it. It's kind of rubbery and spongy. It's nothing like that. This is an actual piece of meat. So we use the shoulder because we can wrap this up. We can put it into a container. We can put it in any refrigerator, and you get plenty of food off of it.
Yeah.
And it's an extremely inexpensive piece of meat. But there's so much going on with it. You have lean cuts, you have tougher cuts that you can slow roast, which this recipe is a nice slow roasted recipe, which makes it fall apart, super juicy. And then everything, all that goes into this bone can be used for other things. So there's a lot that you can do with this.
Yeah, and just kind of maybe a quick overview on curing your own ham. So like once you have the brine, how long did it take? And how did you know that it was ready to go into the oven?
So it takes a little bit of testing. If you follow our recipe, you should be fine as long as it's the same amount of weight. So what you do is when you put it in there, it's really a guessing game because you're not going to cut down through the meat and see where the brine is penetrated to. And sometimes you can't even tell how deep it is until it's completely cooked. So as it's in that brine, the curing salt, the sodium nitrate, will then penetrate into the meat. And what it does is it transforms one piece of the basically the color of the meat. It's the hemoglobin, and it prevents that from turning that brownish gray color that you get from roasted meat, and it keeps it that nice beautiful pink that you see here. It also is a salt, and there's a lot of salt in this brine, so you get all that flavor all directly into the meat itself, so you don't have to sprinkle salt on the outside afterwards. But if you follow our recipe, then you can use that basically as a test. Say this took 2 weeks for me to brine.
Okay.
A larger piece will take sometimes 3 to 4 weeks. It depends on how long or how big of a piece of meat you're doing.
Okay, so definitely, there's no I think sometimes we want to look for like a one size fits all
exactly.
mode.
We're looking for how much does it take per inch of meat, and that doesn't really happen. There's different ways to do this, but if we're just soaking this in a in a brine, there's also ways where you can take an injector needle. Some people have injector needle and inject the brine directly in. That's going to speed up the process because you're getting it down to the center as well as on the outside. But definitely follow the recipe, and you'll be able to 2 weeks for this 10-pound piece of ham.
Great. And if you're wondering where the recipes are, they are, as always, on our blog, blog.modernistpantry.com. All the links will be in the description below, so you can get this recipe and all the other recipes that you'll see today. So I think kind of getting into some of the other items that we talked about. So let's say, it's Christmas, we had this ham, we loved it, but there's like a few pounds of leftovers. What do we do with that?
So there's a few different things. And one thing that I like to have with a Christmas dinner, or sometimes we just have these rolls, right? And a lot of people just purchase them, they're frozen, you cook them off, and I'm not a big fan of those. They're kind of gummy, they're not great, there's no flavor to them. So I like biscuits. Biscuits are much better. They're crispy, they're soft, they're tender, and a lot of people also like to put a lot of, let's say, pineapple on the outside, cloves and all that, but I like to keep my ham, and then I can add the pineapple in other ways. So what I did here is I made a pineapple honey butter. So I took our pineapple powder, and I mixed it into some honey, and then I took that honey and I mixed it, basically incorporated it into some butter, and then I just set it into a mold, and I made my own little sticks of butter to make it, nice and fun. But you get a really nice flavor, and there's actually a piece of the biscuit with some honey butter on it if you want to try it.
All right,
Jamie.
better than me eating the straight butter like I was just
well,
doing.
I mean, it's delicious as it is. There's salt, there's sweet, there's fat. It's everything that you want in a good food. And our biscuits are special because we add a few special ingredients to them. So EverCrisp, generally a frying ingredient. But with frying, it's, flour and oil. And biscuits are basically flour and fat, it's butter in there as well. So what we did is I added some EverCrisp. I replaced some of the flour with EverCrisp. And with the biscuits, it keeps those edges super crispy. The inside stays nice and tender. And then there's a few extra ingredients in it. There's some perfect baking powder, and the perfect baking powder just helps with that last rise, since it is a really fat heavy biscuit, high fat content. So just a little extra rise at the end. And then some SSL, sodium stearoyl lactylate, which also helps with just keeping that nice volume so they're not super flat, which these really crispy, really tender, and those two ingredients help them look like traditional biscuits but still have all those high qualities still.
Yeah, and the SSL, doesn't that also help extend the shelf life, right? So if you don't eat it all the same day, it's going to stay better for longer.
Yeah, SSL is an emulsifier, so it helps keep that fat in and won't stale. But yeah, then it also helps with that rise of it. So it works two ways.
It's cool, and this is really good. Like, I would eat this all, but then I don't know. Like, we have more food here,
things to try, right?
But it is like, I think you just mentioned EverCrisp, and kind of what I like about it is that we use it in all of our frying recipes. But then we discover that it keeps like baked goods really nice too.
Yes, it does.
So it's super delicious. And this butter is, I would eat this butter straight, but that wouldn't be very good for me. So
it's okay. It's the
tasty.
holidays. eat great the rest of the year, but the holidays, eat whatever you want. So for those slices of ham, or maybe some of the parts that fall apart tender, because this ham is nice and slow roasted. I like to do it below 240 degrees and just leave it in the oven, and then just bump it up a little bit at the end so you get that nice kind of coat on the outside. You can hear It's nice and crispy skin on there. All that fat's rendered off and it's all inside. But with those slices of ham that you have, you can make a sandwich. And I kind of want to get this in so we can get it going.
Okay.
And this is Croque Madame. There's two different things. There's Croque Monsieur and Croque Madame. The only difference is that a Croque Madame has a poached egg on top, or an egg in general. But what we did is we wanted to make this the best Croque Madame that we've ever had. So we took our brioche recipe and we made a loaf out of it. And then we took some Emmental cheese, a little bit of yellow mustard. We took our slices of this ham. And what we're going to do is basically make a grilled ham and cheese. That's the first part of this. So let me get that going. And I'm just going to take, and some people will say, oh, why aren't you spreading butter on the outside? The reason I'm not spreading butter on the outside of this is that it is a butter bread. If you're using any other bread, you could spread butter. But I want an extremely thin coat because I don't want the butter to then soak in and make this a soggy breaded sandwich, right?
Okay.
We want it to be crispy. Move that out of there. All right, so I'm going to let this go. And I have my Control Freak set at my perfect temperature for grilling sandwiches. If you have a Control Freak, 315 is great for just turning anything perfectly brown. So I'm going to let that go, just so we can talk about other things that you can do.
Okay.
Just quickly, just do the top so I don't forget after.
All right.
Right. So we'll come back to this and we'll talk about the next step in this process. But we got to let this crisp up just a little bit on the bottom.
Cool.
When you're done with all the meat, so you picked all the meat off and you just have that bone, one thing you can do is make split pea soup. So this split pea soup doesn't have any extra ingredients, but it has what's left over from our great ham. We took our ham, we used every bit of it, but now we have this bone, which is generally inedible and has little bits of meat stuck around, right? And what we did is we took that and we made some ham stock. Basically just put it in some water. You can put in some carrot, celery, onion. You can put in some bay leaves, whatever you want with it. Let it simmer. Then once, maybe 5 to 6 hours after that, you can go even further, but that's where I kind of like it. You can take that out. You can pick all those little bits off and save the little pieces of meat that come off the bone. Then you can make your split pea soup. Split pea soup's very simple. You basically cook the split peas in some ham stock. You may have to add some extra water to it, and then you can puree them up. I like to cook them for a very long time so that they are smooth. I don't want a split pea soup that is like wallpaper paste. I don't think anyone wants that. You add back those little bits of meat to it, and that bone has now given you more food than you can eat, soup in a sandwich on day 4 of your Christmas vacation, and you're not wasting anything. So I really like that, and I also saved some of the ham stock, and we'll talk about that right at the end because I did something really cool for this Croque Monsieur, just an extra added little bit of ingredient use that we're showing off here. So let me just flip this. This should be nicely toasted. Yep. Told you, 315 makes it perfect.
All right, and if you don't have a Control Freak and you want to toast it, what do you recommend for like a general oven, not oven, stovetop setting?
Stovetop, I like to go on the lowest possible flame.
Okay.
And when I add it in, I make sure my pan is nice and hot. I don't add the butter directly to the pan. I just add it onto the bread. When I put it in there, you hear a very, very faint sizzle. That's perfect.
Okay.
At that point, I can just turn it off. If you're using an electric stove, take it completely off and put it on a different burner because that electric stove holds on to so much heat and you're going to end up with black bread on the bottom and then you have to throw that away.
Okay.
No one wants to do that. I just like to just barely get it toasted. I always pop on the oven and I always throw it in because I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. This is our modern bechamel. So what I took is our modern bechamel. You can find that on the blog or you can look in the links in the description below. And I added some cheese to it. So I added some Emmental and some Gruyere to it as well to make a modern Mornay because bechamel is a mother sauce, so you want to make a small sauce. So you take a healthy helping of it and you want to just spread it right on top. Just coat to the edges. And remember, this is Christmas vacation, holiday break, wherever you are. Could just be the weekend after.
You're wearing your stretchy pants, so don't worry about it.
Exactly. I always wear stretchy pants. So, and then after that's on there, you put a healthy amount of cheese as well. So this is just Gruyere. And I'm just going to sprinkle this right on top. And yes, I know it seems like a lot, but it's delicious. So then I take this and I just pop it in the oven if you have a broiler, do a broiler setting. We just threw ours into the oven because we want to get the heat all the way through. We want to make sure that ham's hot. We want to make sure that cheese is melty on the inside and everything's kind of coming together. So I'm going to switch this out with one that is done. Right. So here we have one that is done. You can see the cheese is beautifully melted on top. So I'm just going to take it off. And we can look on the bottom. It's nice and golden brown and delicious. Okay. The reason why I also like to put it into the oven is it gives that pan extra time. And if you have a pan that, let me turn this off. If you have a pan that can go directly into the oven, do that. Yep. Because you hold on to that residual heat, you get a nice crispy bottom, and you're not going to have a soggy sandwich. And the last thing, well, second to last, we have a Stearoyl. So this gives me a nice even flame if I don't have a broiler. If you have a broiler, just pop on the broiler and toss it under there. But I like this because I can really control how even it is. So let me get this going. So I'm just going to heat this up just so it broils the top.
I love watching the cheese bubble when you do this. It looks so much fun.
Just going to get this going.
And if you do want to broil, how long would you recommend doing this for?
So it really depends on how it looks, because I want to make sure I just get those little brown spots and I get it start bubbling like this, because I can't tell you a certain amount of time and then have you go and burn it, you know?
Yeah, and that's kind of always the issue I run into. So I personally like the Stearoyl, but you got a broiler, you got a broiler.
Yep. I just like to use some residual heat after I turn off the flame. And then my last thing, I took a little bit of that ham stock that I had left over, and with Croque Madame, you can poach your eggs in water, but at that point you're just poaching them in water. You're not adding any flavor. So I decided it was a good idea to poach mine in my reduced ham stock.
Ooh.
So when I add this right on top, I have a beautiful poached egg. Right?
Ooh, it's got all that stock juice.
Yeah. Right, so I can turn this, and if I do it properly, I can cut this egg. I always like to spread the egg out a little bit, or else it tends to fall down the center. Then if I cut my sandwich in half.
Scott has chef hands, so he's not burning his fingers on the burning
cheese.
Yes,
if you don't have chef hands, then please use a towel or a tuning fork, but I don't feel much anymore. So we can see this beautiful sandwich.
Ooh.
With that yolk running down. We also have that ham stock that has been turned into ham gloss pretty much, which is just added flavor, and it is delicious. And I'm going to eat this the second the episode is over.
I know, I was like, I could taste it, but I feel like it's going to be like, just running everywhere.
You'll ruin your Christmas sweater.
I know, and we need this sweater for part 2.
Yes.
So, but we have eaten this before, and it is super, super good, and it's just like a wonderful winter lunch that's like really rich and delicious.
Yes.
So I think hopefully, what we've shown today is that you can get a lot out of the money that you spend on your Christmas foods, right? And it doesn't have to be the same boring old same thing nuked up in the microwave day after day. So with just a few easy steps, you can kind of make these into completely new dishes that are really fun and exciting and yummy to eat. So hopefully give it a shot. Happy holidays, and also stick around next week for part 2, where we're going to cover all the delicious sweets that everybody enjoys. So from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Garrett. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. And turn that bell on because it notifies you when we drop a new video.
If you like any of today's recipes, go to blog.modernistpantry.com. There you'll find recipes, Ask a Chefs, and tips and tricks, and more.
And if you have a friend who you think would like this video, share it with them.
And to get any of these great ingredients, just go to our website, www.modernistpantry.com.
And until next time, we'll be here in the Test Kitchen, helping you create memorable and magical experiences.